This conference will now be
696
recorded.
in our art scroll stone chumash. Okay, and we actually have a double parsha this week, Bahar v'chukotai, and with that we will complete the book of Vayikra. Tell you, the weeks, the years, they go by fast, don't they? They fly by. Okay, so let us begin. Bahar starts off all about Shemitah. Shemitah is the sabbatical year. By the Hashem and Moshe, Hashem spoke to Moshe, Bahar Sinai Lemor. Hashem spoke to Moses on Mount Sinai, saying, Daber al b'nei Yisrael, speak to the children of Israel and say to them, when you come to the land, Asher ani notein lachem, the land that I am giving to you. And the key is to always remember from whom we have received it. V'shavta haaretz, the land must rest, Shabbat laHashem, as a Shabbat for God, meaning Sheishanim, 6 years, Tizra Sadecha, plant your field, Sheishanim, for 6 years, prune your karmecha, your vineyard, gather all the tvuah, gather all the produce, but the 7th year, do not plant, do not prune, right? It is a Shanat Shabbatonia la'aretz. It is a sabbatical year for the land. Okay? It's for you to eat, but not to act as an owner. Okay? You eat, but you don't act as an owner. You can eat, so can everyone else eat. It mentioned it should be for your animals and for the beasts. What does that mean? Well, I can bring into my barn, into my storehouses for my animals, as long as there still is out in the field for the beasts. But otherwise, if there's not out in the field for others, and there is in my storehouses, I'm acting like an owner. And we can't act as an owner, as the Pasuk says on page 698 or page 700. The Pasuk there says, Chaf Gimel 23, the land will not be sold, Ki li kol haaretz, because the land is mine. Ki geirim v'toshavim atem imadi. Verse 23, 24 there. You are, how do they translate this best? Sojourners and residents with me. Okay, so let's go back to 696. Let's focus on this for a little bit. Hashem spoke to Moshe. Yes, Cheryl, sorry.
Did you say that during Shemitah, they have to leave food out for the beasts and
You can't bring. I don't have to put out fried chicken out in the field for the beasts, but any of the things that are growing out in the field, I can only take into my house if there still is out in the field. Right? I'd have to be like any other person. I can't be the owner. I'm not the owner. Shemitah makes me realize I am not the owner. Good morning, Gabriella. Good morning, Elise. Wow, such a big girl already. Right? Shemitah makes me realize I am not the owner. I am a resident on God's property. That is how we need to view this. And this
wait,
yes.
sorry. So does that mean when it isn't Shemitah?
You're on camera.
That
When it isn't Shemitah, you got camera shy, sorry.
then you can bring everything in from the field?
It's my stuff. My
So
stuff.
only 1 year the beasts get to eat the food?
Only 1 year the beasts get to eat. even, right, only 1 year, I could only eat if they're also eating, right? I mean, look, any fruit trees that you have, the beasts do pretty well, right? The squirrels get to all of our avocados. Yeah, the roof rats, they do well for themselves, right? But my responsibility, but I can act as an owner. I could put things around my trees to keep the beasts off of them, right? Comes the Shemitah year, I can't act as an owner. Okay? Now,
basically the way we act.
yeah, because we don't, Shemitah is only applying in Israel.
But that doesn't apply to us right now, right?
It doesn't apply outside
But
of
it does
Israel.
apply
And
just
in
inside.
Israel, it does apply.
Oh, okay.
But in modern day Israel, there are a number of ways that they accommodate Shemitah.
Oh.
There are those that fully observe the Shemitah, the sabbatical year, and they don't partake at all. They don't act as owners. Now, let's say I've got a vineyard, right, that's making wonderful top-level wines. So I can't now, if I'm going to let anyone just walk in there and start cutting, that's going to cause lasting damage to my vineyard. Shemitah is one thing, but the next year I need to be back in business, right? And if people who don't know how to do it and go there, start cutting grapes, pulling, right, it's going to destroy my land. I don't need to allow my land to be destroyed. I can't act, I'm sorry? That's not the mitzvah, right? So in modern day Israel, the way that this works in many of these places is what's called an Otsar Beit Din. The Beit Din will go onto the property. They will take over the property. Let's say it's my vineyards, right? They could hire me at whatever the proper going rate is as a person who oversees production of wine. Everyone can get paid for the work that they're doing, but I can't act as an owner. So the market price for that wine will be the actual costs that it took to bring it to market. Normally, as the owner, I've got my costs to bring it to market, and I have my profit margin built into that. Right? I might be taking a salary for myself and I want to be making a profit in my business. That's normally how it works. But once the Beit Din takes over for that year, I could oversee, I'll make sure I have the proper workers who know how to cut, how to trim, how to do everything, right? And then the cost to market, we produce 1,000 bottles. What's the cost of the bottles, of the labels, of the delivery, of the production, of the workers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, divided by 1,000. Right? That's the cost of each bottle, and that's what people will pay. But no one is acting as an owner. No one is making any profit off of that. But let's come back to our psukim. Hashem spoke to Moshe on Har Sinai, Lamor. God spoke to Moses on Mount Sinai, saying, and then we talk about Shemitah. What's strange about this pasuk? Har Sinai, right? Now, there are certain mitzvot that are mentioned or mentioned in Devarim, right? That was spoken by Arvot Moab, in the plains of Moab on our way to Israel. But Shemitah is not mentioned anywhere else. So obviously, where must it have been said? On Mount Sinai. So Rashi asks, Ma inyan Shemitah etzel Har Sinai? What is the connection between Shemitah, or what is the unique connection between Shemitah and Har Sinai? And Aaron, correct me if I'm wrong, I think an expression in modern Hebrew is when someone is saying something that seems to be completely unrelated to the conversation, you'll say, Ma inyan Shemitah etzel Har Sinai. What does that have to do with, like we'd say, what does that have to do with anything? Right? Or we say, what does that have to do with the price of tea in China? I don't know where that came from. That's what we used to say as kids. What does that do with the price of tea in China? Right? So in Israel, they say, Ma'inyan Shemitah etzel Har Sinai. What does Shemitah have to do with Har Sinai? That's a way of saying to someone, what are you talking about? What does that have to do with anything that we're discussing? So that's the Rashi's question here. All the mitzvot were said on Sinai. So rather, Rashi says the Torah wanted to teach us that Shemitah, we know all of it was said by Sinai. We know this already because it's not said anywhere else in the Torah. This then comes to reflect on all the other mitzvot, even those that we might have heard about later on in Parsha, in Sefer Devarim, the book of Deuteronomy, Ba'arvot Moav. There it was a repetition. But all the mitzvot were said on Mount Sinai. So in other words, the Torah wanted to pick one mitzvah and spell out that was on Sinai to teach me that all the mitzvot were given in their totality on Mount Sinai. Very good. But why Shemitah in particular? You want to pick one mitzvah that's not stated elsewhere in the Torah and tell me on Mount Sinai, even though I know, of course, it's got to be Mount Sinai, where else could it be? To reflect on all the mitzvot, even those that are repeated elsewhere, that those two were told in totality on Mount Sinai. So you wanted to pick one mitzvah to use that as a reflection for all the mitzvot. Beautiful. But why pick particularly Shemitah to teach me that lesson? Yes, Cheryl.
I think because
Don't get nervous. Yes.
people would never pick that, as mankind would never think of doing such a thing for their own detriment, kind of, in a way.
Beautiful.
Only Hashem, it's just from Hashem. So.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So Cheryl is sharing with us the idea expressed by the Chatam Sofer, the Chasam Sofer. And he, let me paint it a little further, if I may. You know, you're the artist, I'll do a little more painting. This painting I can do. The other painting I leave to you. Let's say we were getting together to write a Torah. Right? There are those that say that the Torah is not divine. The Torah is written by a bunch of nomads traveling through the desert, and they wrote the Torah, and it's not God-given. Right? Our detractors, our deniers will say that. So let's say we, right, this group of 10 right here, we're going to be writing a Torah. But mind you, in this Torah, we're going to say, and God spoke to Moses saying. So we want this Torah to come across as if it is divine. Okay, so what should be included in the Torah? Okay, sacrifices. Yeah, any self-respecting religion has to have some sacrifices, right? You know, belief in God, of course, right? You know, these are all basics. You know, some kosher laws. Okay, it's good to have this discipline. You know, the societal laws: don't murder, don't kill, don't steal. Yeah, you know, we need all of that. So far, so good. I've got a great idea. I'd like to propose to include everyone needs some time off. Vacation is very, very important. Let's mandate that every 7 years you don't work. Don't plow, don't plant, don't harvest, just right? Great idea, right? Except someone might come up with a problem and say, look on page 700. Verse 20, Pasuk Chaf. Ichi Tomru, but what do you might say, Manochal. 1 second, Rabbi, right? That's a great idea, except what are people going to eat on the 7th year? Hein lo nizra, they're not going to plant, they're not going to gather. No, I've got the answer. Verse 21. We'll write in this Torah of ours that God says, Vitziviti et birchati, verse 21, I will command my blessing on the 6th year, and the 6th year will produce enough produce L'shalosh shanim, for 3 years.
Mm.
The 6th year will have to carry the 6th year and the 7th year and the start of the 8th year until stuff goes. That's what we'll write in the Torah.
There's a problem.
So my committee here said that's going to take a lot of chutzpah to write that in the Torah, and chances are this Torah is not going to last to year 7 or 8 because it ain't going to happen. Because how could we, this committee of 10, decide to write that and think that miraculously there's going to be enough food for the 6th year to carry for 3 years? Right? That's not something that we could ever guarantee, that we could ever propose. So therefore, like Cheryl's saying, the Chasam Sofer says, Shemitah, we clearly see it is from Mount Sinai. Because who else could make such a guarantee and fulfill such a guarantee? And therefore, this then reflects upon all the other mitzvot. There's another great example of this. You go to page 512 for a moment in our Chumashim. Page 512, the end of Parshas Kitisa. And here it's talking about the mitzvah of verse 23. We're in Shemot, Perek Lamed Daled, Pasuk Chav Gimel, chapter 34, verse 23. Shalosh pa'amim b'shana, 3 times a year. Yera'eh kol zechurcha, all of your males must come and be seen, see a Pnei Hadon, the face, so to speak, of the Master Hashem, the God of Israel. Meaning, we go to Yerushalayim, we go to the Beit HaMikdash, right? And there, the Shalosh Regalim, the 3 pilgrimage holidays. Now, all the males are leaving. Imagine all the men leave the north along our Lebanese-Syrian border. All the males leave the south along the fence of Gaza. What do you think is going to happen? It's not going to be pretty. The pasuk says, the next verse, Ki orish goyim mi panecha. I will banish the nations before you. V'hir chavti et givulecha. I will widen your borders. V'lo yachmod ish et artzecha. No one will desire your land. Ba'alotcha, when you ascend up to Jerusalem. Le'ra'ot, to appear before Hashem Elokecha 3 times a year. They've got the same calendars. They know the Jewish calendar. They know when the Shalosh Regalim are, when the 3 pilgrimage holidays are. They know when no male is going to be there. At least no one over age 13 is going to be there. It's going to be at most women and children. They know exactly. They could plan it on their calendar. They know exactly when it's coming. They could plan in advance. Don't worry, God says. No one is going to want your land. No one's going to attack. No one's going to invade. You will be safe. Right? Who can imagine we have our committee and we're writing up this Torah and we say, oh, right? Victor says, oh, I got a great idea. We have to have like a kumbaya gathering 3 times a year. Let's have this tremendous gathering in the holy place in Jerusalem. Wonderful. By a temple. Wow. Sounds amazing. All males go. Aaron asks, yeah, but we've got a problem, right? We'll be attacked. You can't leave all the men there. You can't leave it with just women and children. But Cheryl says, no problem. We'll write down in our Torah, no one's going to attack. No one worries. Now we're good. Oh, why didn't I think of writing that down in our Torah? Now we're safe, right? Clearly, these are all things that cannot be written in the Torah by people. These are instructions. These are guarantees that only a creator could give, could make, and could uphold. That's the key. Could uphold that. What is this whole idea of Shemitah? What is this mitzvah? So some want to say, well, this is coming to show this is the first crop rotations. You see how advanced the Torah is, that the Torah is telling us about crop rotation well before everyone else understood about the nutrients in the soil and exhausting the soil and allowing it to replenish in order to produce more, right? But if that's the case, then it would have made a lot more sense to say, everyone take 1/7 of your land every year and leave it fallow. Take 1/7 every year and leave it fallow. And that way we'll be able to regenerate the strength, the nutrients of the soil without having this ridiculous situation of everyone the same year, right? All of their fields leaving it fallow. So this is, well, what would you say is what this mitzvah is coming to have us internalize and to uplift us? What would we say, guys?
Hashem's in control.
Hashem's in control. Good.
It's also a reflection, a larger reflection of the 7-day cycle.
Okay, good. It's a reflection of the 7-day cycle. We have the seven-year cycle. We have the 7 Shemitah cycle. We have all of these. We have all of these different cycles. Yes, good.
One idea that I've heard is that land symbolizes perpetuity, like Olam Vaed, like gold, silver, money, all of that can disappear, but land like has permanence, and we don't even own that.
Okay, good. Like we said before, Ki li kol haaretz, the land is mine. And also, I think, as core, it teaches us this trust, this bitachon, meaning ultimately, my sustenance comes from God. And even though this would seemingly upset my parnasa, my livelihood, my sustenance, God is letting you know, I'm the one who gives you what you have. Right? You are a
Rabbi?
guest here. You are a guest here in the land. And, you know, we discussed before the idea of giving maaser, of tithing, your take home after taxes, your take home income, right? Recognizing that it's from God and He is giving me this rabbi's discretionary account control over 10% of the money that's not really mine. But God allows me to use my discretion as to where I would like to direct it. But it's not mine. And just this constant awareness, reminder that we are living by the grace of God. Right? And that which we have, God gives us. God says this year, take off, don't work. You have time to study. You have time to do all the things that we always put off because we're too busy for work, right? Hopefully get involved in spiritual pursuits. Beautiful. And you don't have to worry, right? You know, we just discussed, yes, Aaron.
trying to play it through in my head. It sounds very noble and very nice, but when you put it into practicality, does the land produce enough for the next year for everybody? How did it actually play out when it came to real life? And secondly, maybe the owner of the vineyard can accumulate enough for a year, but what about the poor schmoes, the ones who live paycheck to paycheck? How would they actually survive? And how would it be enough food, right? You can't keep an apple for 2 years, for example.
Well, it includes the apple, it includes the grain, it includes, all these things, right? During the course of that year, the apple is growing, they're good to go. In other words, everyone has equal access to all that which is growing. Everyone has equal access to it. And yeah, so you're right, for the poor Shemo, it will be more of a nisayon.
How many people here will have an easy time with the whole year without a paycheck? Could be quite challenging.
Yeah.
But we don't have that same promise either. I mean, I guess in the 6th year, he says he would produce enough for 3 years. So it would be a triple increase.
Theoretically, right?
Yes. But let's keep in mind.
They get enough.
But let's keep in mind, right? If the 6th year all of a sudden grew 3x, right? So then why would they say, well, we'll eat on the 7th year? They see what they'll eat. So the understanding, at least getting upset about this.
Yes.
The understanding is that it's not necessarily going to be a 3x volume in the 6th year, because that's going to be an imposition. Where do I store all that? What do I do with all that? But it's going to be bracha b'me'ayim, literally a blessing in one's innards, right? That that amount will last you. You won't need as much. So it's going to be a serious. Now, it doesn't mean that a person who normally works in the fields by this guy doesn't mean he can't find some other work, right? This is only affecting the work in the fields, right? The land is God's. At the same time, it was, Aaron, you're correct, it was a society where that is what most were doing, right? And that's where the bracha, that's where the blessing would come in. Now, we in my morning Gemara class, so it came up the idea of Shemitah also canceling any loans. So the question that always comes up is, well, somebody asks money, well, why would anyone ever consider lending money before Shemitah is about to come? And I said, well, let's say someone approaches you right before Shemitah for a loan. Are you thinking to yourself, how can I possibly give this? How can I possibly give this guy a loan? Shemitah is going to cancel it. And just as I'm about to tell the guy, sorry, I can't help you, the phone rings. I say, yes, just hold on 1 minute, please. Answer the phone. Hello? Yes? Oh, Warren? Warren Buffett? The Oracle of Omaha. Wow. Hi, to what do I owe the honor of this phone call? Oh, okay. Okay, you're telling me that only blessing will come from it? You're telling me that I will be whole from this? Okay, thanks for the call. Yes, I'm happy to make the loan. Warren Buffett just called and told me, not Jimmy, Warren, just called and told me that we've got a deal over here, and that I need not worry in any way because things will be good. I won't lose out from lending you this money. Happy to do it. And that's what Hashem tells us. by a loan. That's what Hashem tells us by Shemitah. You're right. It's a challenge. It's a challenge for us. But the guarantee is bracha will come from it. You're not going to be missing out. I was just talking to somebody about a certain institution that the only it's miraculous how every time that there is like, oh no, what are we going to do financially? It comes through, right? It doesn't mean that, how well will we sleep at night? That will depend on our level of trust. I think as Woody Allen would say, when, the sheep will lay down with the lion. I know they'll get much sleep, but it'll lay down with the lion. But Shemitah was kept, but then we'll soon see, Aaron, that Shemitah was not kept. And that's what leads into the tochacha, the terrible, terrible curses that will befall us. And we'll see at the end of the next parsha, it speaks about then the land will exact payment for all of those Shabbats that were missed. Let's go a little bit further out over here.
And Rabbi, that leads me to believe that maybe there's also an aspect of a Yom Kippur for the land.
Let's take a look along the same lines over here on page 702. V'chiyamuch achicha, when your brother will become poor, umata yado imach, and his hand drops, meaning he does not have the ability to stay afloat. V'hechazakta bo, what must you do? You've got to strengthen him. You've got to bring him up. You got to support him. Ger v'toshav, whether he is a ger, a convert, toshav, a resident amongst you, v'chai imach, and that way he could live with you. Al tikach me'ito, don't take from him neshech v'tarbit, don't take from him interest, don't charge this person, this brother of yours, interest. V'yareita me'elokecha, you should be fearful of God, aware of God, meaning if you're going to do it in a way, I'm going to give the money to my neighbor, the Gentile, right? A Jew can't lend or borrow with interest, but a Jew can lend to or borrow from a non-Jew with interest. There's nothing wrong or immoral about interest. If you want something of mine, I could charge you. You want my car? I can charge you. You want to stay in my house? I can charge you. You want to use something of mine? I can charge you. There's nothing wrong in renting something out. So now there's value in you having my money. I can charge you. There's nothing immoral about it, except when it comes to your brother. When it comes to your brother, there you don't want to take a bite out of him. Right? Neshech, interest, comes from the word nishicha, not nishika, which is a kiss, but nishicha, which is a bite. Right? Because at first it seems like a little bit, but it gets worse and worse. Vitar bit. What happens? It grows and grows and grows and grows until all of a sudden the interest that you owe is more than even the principal that you borrowed in the first place. And once again, v'chei achicha imach, and your brother will live with you. Very, very interesting. There is a teaching of the sages that if a person lends with interest, then he will not, or she will not arise during the time of the ultimate reward that we call Tchiyat HaMeitim, the resurrection of those who have died already. A person will not stand up at Tchiyas HaMeitim. So in the town of Posen, where Rabbi Akiva Eger was the Rav, there was a family, a person who was fabulously wealthy, and his wealth came from lending to other Jews with interest. And he became fabulously wealthy. Well, when he died, the Chevra Kadisha, those who managed the Jewish cemetery, typically a plot was 100, whatever the denomination there was. They told the family 2,000. 2,000. 2,000. Family said, look, we know you're angry with our father, for doing right, but this is ridiculous. And they went to complain to the authorities there, the non-Jewish authorities. And the non-Jewish authority then summoned Rabbi Akiva Eger to explain. And he said as follows. He said, we Jews believe in Tchiyat HaMeitim. Be a time that the Messiah will come that will lead to the resurrection. So everyone is really just renting the space temporarily. It's a short-term rental because we're hoping tomorrow the Messiah will be coming. But someone who lends with interest, it's not, such a person does not resurrect. And therefore, for this person, it's not a short-term rental. This is for all time. That's why the price is what it is. And the governmental authorities appreciated that and told the family, look, if you want to bury elsewhere, we have our cemeteries. You're more than welcome to purchase a plot in our cemeteries. But if you want to be in the Jewish cemetery, so then it'll need to be according to their terms. So the Ben Ish Chai says that's actually in the pasuk. Look at that pasuk again, verse 36. Al tikach meito, don't take from him neshech v'tarbit, right, which is different types of interest, increase. V'areitem elokecha, and that way v'chei achicha imach. That way, when everyone resurrects, your brother, he will also resurrect, right? You will be able to resurrect along with all of your brethren, right? Otherwise, you don't give it up. But this idea of the interest, once again, is that same idea that ultimately my parnasa comes from God. By employing devious means, right, by going against God's directives, that is not going to give me the blessing. Right? God is not going to send me a blessing through unscrupulous means. Okay, we also had in this part, there's so much to discuss. We have that when you sell your ancestral land, comes Yovel, you get it back. If you can redeem it back, prorated, right? You sold it for $40,000 40 years before Yovel, so it breaks down to $1,000 a year. You want to buy it back after 20 years, $20,000. After 35 years, $5,000. But ultimately, if you don't redeem it back, comes Yovel, it comes back to you, right? Which is an incredible law. That a person who's down does not become down and out. And the person has a chance to start again. If not him, then his children will have a chance to start again, depending how long, whatever it is, however the years work out. What a beautiful smile, huh? Beautiful smile. Okay, let's go to Bechukotai. Okay? And this, the is harsh tochacha, harsh tochacha is rebuke, right? All the blessings, if you follow my decrees and observe my commandments, perform them, rains in their time, the land will give its produce, tree of the field will give its fruit, right? Your threshing will last until the vintage until the sowing, eat bread to be satisfied, dwell securely in your land, there'll be peace in the land, right? No beast, no sword will cross your land, right? All good, right? However, then it goes on page 711. If you do not listen to me, then it goes on and on and on and on. If we, and the key word that's constantly used over here is carry. Carry means it just so happens, happenstance. If we think that it's just the luck of the draw, our bad luck, if we don't attribute it to God, then it's going to get worse and worse and worse until we finally acknowledge, and it gets graphic, it becomes horrific. But it's fascinating on 714. Let's look at verse 33. We're in Vayikra Chavav Lamed Gimel, chapter 26, verse 33. Vetchem ezareva goyim. I will spread you out amongst the nations. Varikoti acharechem charev. And the sword will be drawn against you. Vaita artechem shemama. Orechem yu charba. Your land will be desolate. Your cities will be a ruin. Now, that is both a curse and a blessing. Because part of the blessing is that even when we were in exile, the land did not accept others. It was not fruitful for others. It did not, the desert did not bloom for others. And we've all read Mark Twain's account of his visit to the Holy Land in the mid-1800s, how the tumbleweeds looked lonely. That's how barren and desolate the land was. So your land will be desolate. Your cities will be a ruin. That's a curse and a blessing. It's a curse that we will not be there. It's a blessing that no one else will find that to be their place. But then Lamed Daled, Az tirtzeh haaretz et shabtoteha. Then the land will be appeased for its sabbaticals. Kol yemei hashama, during all the years of its desolation, va'atem be'eretz oivechem, and you were in the land of your enemies. Again, az tishbat haaretz, then the land will rest. V'hirtzat et shabtoteha, and will be appeased for all of its Shabbatot. Lamed Hey 35, Kol Yemei Hashama, all the years of its desolation, it will rest. Eit Asher Lo Shavta B'Shabtotechem B'Shivtechem Aleha. What to make up for the times it did not rest during your sabbaticals when you dwelled there. So we see that we're not just talking agricultural. And we always say all of the mitzvot bring us back. All the mitzvot bring us back to that very, very first mitzvah, first Aveira, which was in Gan Eden, that we have to realize that we are living in God's world. That's what every mitzvah is geared towards, that awareness that we are visitors here, treading in God's world, God's domain. All the parameters and all the do's and all the don'ts are all built around that awareness. And we had the Gan Eden and what that it would have given its fruits, and we have the land of Israel, which is it giving its fruits. But if we forget the one who has given it to us and the parameters through which we are meant to enjoy and partake of it, then the consequence will be it'll be taken away from us.
Rabbi?
Yes, Cheryl.
So in today's Israel, how well is Shemitah being observed?
Okay, so in today's Israel, Cheryl asked, how well is Shemitah being observed? So there was, at the time before the establishment of the state and in the early years of the state, there was this concern of how, if we would be able to survive it. And therefore, there were halachic allowances that was made, most famously what's called the heter mechira, that the land was sold to non-Jews, and there are opinions that in such a case, then the restrictions of Shemitah do not apply. That's the heter mechira. More recently, it's been 70 plus years, more recently, the less and less people are relying on the heter mechira, and what's happening, many places are now keeping Shemitah. There is the Otsar Beit Din. I mentioned before that the Beit Din will come in and will produce, but not as owners, but just everyone is, workers there. And sorry, a co-op, exactly, right? And there are no profits. Though a co-op will split the profits. There are no profits. No one's making money off of it. It goes to market at its rate, at whatever the actual cost was. And also you have a lot of importing of produce from outside of Israel.
But aren't those just loopholes and that defeats the whole purpose? Yes, if you do mechira or co-op, the initial purpose is to not work the land, to let it replenish.
Yeah. But I wouldn't say to let it replenish. The purpose is to throw our trust onto Hashem, right? And there are individuals that do that. The state of Israel as a whole was not ready to do that. Let's keep in mind that the state of Israel is a secular state, right? So the state of Israel, you have many moshavim.
Those curses will come up on us.
Well, it troubles me also, Aaron, right? So Aaron says that the curse will come upon us. So there's a difference between just rejecting it and saying, I'm just going to do everything, or finding halachic parameters within which one can maneuver. And I hear that. Well, it makes sense to me that when we're dealing with a secular state, that people as a whole are not willing to say, we're just going to keep this fully and God will take care of us. So then the middle ground is individuals could and should, and many do, but let's find a halachic pathway for those who anyhow are not going to. Let's have them do it in a halachically mandated way, similar to a degree to the idea of Shemitah canceling loans. Ideally, we get the phone call from Warren Buffett. God tells us you don't have to worry. But Hillel, already in the time of the Gemara, saw that people were not lending money when they needed to people who needed. And therefore, he instituted Pruzbul. Pruzbul did not negate the laws of Shemitah. Pruzbul was a halachic maneuvering to allow people to collect the loan in a halachically permissible manner. The way that works is there's an existing law that I can't collect the loan, But if the loan was given over to Beit Din, then it can be collected. Beit Din can collect it, and they could appoint whoever it is to collect it. That was an existing law. What Hillel did was he institutionalized that. That instead of having to go to a Beit Din and work that out, he said, get 3 people together, make them your Beit Din, and write down, I'm giving to you, the Beit Din, the authority of this loan, and they in turn appoint me to collect the loan, and thereby I'm allowed to collect the loan. It's a halachic workaround. Now, does it defeat the purpose? It defeats the purpose of people ideally being willing to lend and not collect. But if we have a situation where that's not happening, and the poor people who need to borrow, they're having this credit crunch, they're not able to. So then when you have a choice of should people be ignoring the halacha, breaking the halacha, right? It's not will they do it right or not do it right. It's will they do it, will they not do it at all? So then it makes sense to find a halachic workaround. Now, one of my colleagues, Allah Shalom, Rabbi Shlomo Price, Zatzal, a wonderful, wonderful person, was not a well-to-do person, and he lent money, and he neglected to write a prusbul, and he rejoiced in that he has the opportunity to fulfill this mitzvah of Shemitah. And when the person came to pay him back, he said, Shemitah passed, right? The loan's canceled. Now, if a borrower says, I understand, but I'd like to give you the money, that's that person's prerogative, right? The command of the Torah is you can't go collect it. You can't go demand it. Someone wants to give it, they can give it, right? So in dire situations, and again, when we have a secular state, right, which is not going to just say, listen, we're going to trust in God. So then then the proper path is for the rabbis to find a halachic pathway through which, it was the Chazon Ish who was involved in this Heter Mechira originally, right? The question now, should it still be applied? That different communities take different approaches now when it's no longer such a dire, in such a desperate situation. Let's just go to the very last psukim. I want to read you a Rambam. The last pasuk is Eila HaMitzvot, page 722. These are the mitzvot that Hashem commanded Moshe to the children of Israel, Bahar Sinai, on Mount Sinai. So this seems simply understood. This is going back on the entire Sefer. This is the last verse of the entire book of Leviticus, of Vayikra, and it's saying all these are the mitzvah that Hashem commanded Moshe to the children of Israel on Mount Sinai. But there is another approach. The very last pasuk before that, or the two halachot before that, is if a person, verse 31, 32, if a person consecrated something and now wants to redeem it back, he's got to add on what we call a chomesh, a fifth, to the amount for the redemption. And verse 33, if I makdish, I consecrate an animal, I can't then swap it. I can't even swap a not such good animal for a better animal. And if I go ahead and I try to swap it, you know what? Vayahu utmurato kodesh. Both the original one and the one that I tried to swap, they both become kodesh. So on that, the Rambam writes, he writes, this is at the end of his laws of Tamura, of the exchange, the swap. It appears to me that there is a similar motivating rationale. If one consecrates and now wants to redeem, he has to add a fifth, right? And now a person consecrated an animal and wants to swap, can't swap. They both become Kodesh. And he writes as follows. The Torah went to plumbed the depths of a person's thoughts. Human nature tends to increase one's property. Either he made a vow or consecrated, he will reconsider, change his mind, and redeem it for less than it's worth. So the Torah says, if he redeems it for himself, he must add a fifth, right? Similarly, he consecrated an animal, right? He might reconsider. If he can't redeem it, what will he do? He'll exchange it for a lesser animal. And if we were allowed to exchange an inferior for a better one, he will exchange a better one for an inferior one and claim, no, it really is better, the new one. Therefore, the Torah removed that option, forbidding all exchanges, and penalized him if he made an exchange, that both become consecrated. All of these ordinances are to subjugate one's evil inclination, to improve one's character. Most of the Torah's laws are nothing other than this, to make a person's conduct upright. That's what the Torah is about. So there are those that say that this last pasuk, these are the mitzvot that Hashem commanded Moshe and Yisroel on Mount Sinai, is not just going, it's not necessarily going back on all the mitzvot. It's referring to these last two and letting us know the same way that the purpose of these last two mitzvot is to uplift us, to make us, to improve us, to pull us away from our tendencies and allow us to act on a higher plane. You should know that's what the entire Torah is all about. The entire Torah and all the mitzvot is there to try to get us to be better, to improve us. The whole machloket we'll discuss as we get closer to Shavuot, of the debate between Moshe and the angels about the Torah being given. Moshe's winning argument was, we have this Yetzer Hara, we have these inclinations to do not always the best things. And therefore, the Torah, we're the ones who need the Torah, because the Torah helps us to transcend, to transform, to become better human beings, better servants of God, better people. And that's what this is all about. We close the Sefer with Chazak. Chazak v'nit chazek. Be strong, and may we be strengthened as we begin the book of Bamidbar next week. Okay, everybody. Say their goodbyes. Okay. A good day, everybody. Shavua Tov, Shavua Tov.
Thank you.
Listen, the sign up for Shavuot has gone out. I need people. It's going to be the night of why, right? 48 why questions. Why do we do this? Why do we do that? Please sign up. Kathy, you were a home run last year. Please sign up. Sign up. Okay, Victor, Gabriella, Esther, Cheryl, Aaron. Please sign up to give a 5-6 minute presentation on one of those questions. The earlier you look at the list, the greater the choice you have, right? Yeah. The email went out yesterday. There are 48 questions. I took 6 of them. Another 6 or 8 have been taken already. So the earlier you go, the better, the greater choice you've got. I sent the email out yesterday. Okay? The night of why. Let's get whys from the 48 whys. Okay, everybody.
So does number 1 start right?
The first 4 are